So it works. Also, my speak will be about design systems. No, I'm just joking. Um, design systems, they're beasts. They want to get tamed. And if we pull it off, they're pretty awesome. You said I'm a freelancer. That's true. I work for Ofca currently. I freelance for them. I work for SVB. I work for others as well. During that time, I've worked with several design systems. I've seen what works, what doesn't work. I've built some of them myself or helped with developing them. And yeah, I'll talk from that from my background there. I'm not actually allowed to show you anything of it because of NDAs, um, except for a little bit that you'll see at the end of the presentation. And also, I started a side project called Validate Design. That's a UX validation outsourcing idea that I'm doing, where you basically can give your web app or your website to me, and I validate whatever you have on there, and then provide feedback within a sprint. And right, so let's get back to the topic. Design systems. Where did they come from? Just that we have a even starting ground. In the beginning, we had like corporate design systems. They were mostly print, right? Corporate manuals designed. Next, we had the UX patterns. They were basically describing how the UI should work, but they were still descriptive. Awesome works. And now, with the current generation design system, it's basically the first time that we have actionable components in there. And it's the first time that we bridge this gap from the designer to the developer in one product. So that's pretty exciting. And that's really important, the product aspect of a design system. A design system needs a team that supports it. It needs the whole process that a normal product needs as well. So I came up with this concept that I call the 5 pillars. It's basically the 5 phases that a design system goes through in the life cycle, and we'll look at all 5 of them now. So the first one is we have to sell it. This is sort of like the business part of the whole thing. This whole concept here is a mix from product owner, designer, and developers. So research would be the next part. Something that's often overlooked. I mean, it's normal in a normal product to do research, but a design system needs the same commitment. Then we have the design phase, where we actually design the design system. We need to build it. And then probably the most important of all of this, we have to maintain it. Because it's not done. It's not a one-off. We need to keep at it. Anyway, let's have a look at the first one, right? Why do we need the design system? It's really important that you talk to your stakeholders, your product teams, understand the context they're in, their business case that they're trying to achieve, because you'll have to design for them, for their result, what they're trying to achieve, right? And based on that research, you build up your value proposition, and that's basically what you offer with your design system, right? There are different benefits that a design system has, and these are just 3 of them, and all of them talk to different stakeholders. For example, like consistency. If you talk to a UX designer, he'll be happy about that. Improve quality. The dev is happy if everything works fine. And speed, time to market is something that the product owner or the business cares about. So tailor whatever you sort of like how you sell your design system, or like what problem it solves, tailor that to whoever decides in your company and has the money in the end. This is a point that sometimes gets overlooked. The design system is always a trade-off. For example, a design or a developer will lose flexibility if they have to use our components. And sometimes it makes maintenance harder because of the dependency and everything. But at the same time, they get more time to do productive stuff, build business logic, what they're actually employed to do, right? And this is the same for the designer as well. If we have a design system, we're limited to like how that component interacts, right? But at the same time, this frees us up to solve the underlying problems and do like actually like move the product forward instead of focusing on micro interactions, which are important. That's why we have the design system. But we can do so much more if we're not focused on the small parts. This is something that may or may not hurt the designer's heart. Although it's hard to pull off and it's something to be proud of, like, let's not dribbleize our design systems. Only build what we really need, because there's a need in a product, and leave everything out. Keep it lean. And that's basically like what it's about. It's about moving workload from the product team to the design system team. So the product team can focus on what they're doing best. So I have a small story here. If we have like micro interactions, this is basically what your devs are doing. They're trying to fix all the small things, and that's good because it's perfection and you're trying to get like the last drop out of it. So it's still lemon juice, but it's not very effective, right? So I currently work at SBB, and we started in the beginning of this year. We started with nothing, right? And we had only two sprints, from zero, from scratch, to a working prototype, MVP, where we could have orders end to end from the front end to the back end system with the final design, because we have the design system. There's no way we could have done that without the design system. And for me, that's how we should work. See? That's the difference if you have a design system or if you're actually doing all the components and doing the micro interactions. Sorry, Alina. That's not my clicker. It tastes good. It's fresh. So. And also it clicks for me now because, sorry. Dario will buy you a new one. Sponsored by Digitech. So, first phase done. We sold it. Successful pitch. We got the money. So we start building it. No, we don't. We research again, right? First part, we just have to know like the basics. Now we actually go deep, right? So what are we solving, right? Don't copy other design systems. They are building design systems for their specific use cases. And you don't want to start your design system as a bad ripoff, right? Because your design system will form the character of your products. The interactions that you build forms how your products are perceived. So do your own work, copy only what's really good and works for you, and everything else invent. Who are the users? Well, obviously like the end user, but also the product teams, the developers. They're equally important for you, right? So every time as a user experience designer, also the users are your product teams. This is a quick tip to start. Build a component inventory. Take screenshots of all the components you have with the different states, because that gives you a baseline and sort of a roadmap that you can present. And so then gives you sort of like a timeline where you're like, okay, look, we need this amount of money to build these and these and these components, right? So the goal in this phase here is to build a vision. And the important thing here is write it down. Because once you've started, your design system wants to grow like cancer. It will grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And you need this focus, this vision as a lighthouse where you can sort of challenge your decisions against. So write it down, keep it close to you. Right. The design phase. That's my favorite part. Okay. When we're building a design system, there are sort of two distinct approaches that we can take. The first one, me working at a train company, is a Schnellzug. What's a Schnellzug in English? A fast train? Fast train? Okay, a fast train. And that's basically when you take shortcuts, and you can do that if you have like one product that you support and you have like 2 or 3 designers and you can sit together at a table. That's totally fine. Like, don't go overboard then. Don't professionalize something you don't have to professionalize, right? But if you have multiple products that you support or different developers that you're not really in contact with, you want to have a more rigid approach. So this is the cargo train, which I currently work for SBB Cargo. And that's what I will be talking about, this the more rigid approach. When we're looking at a design system, modern design system, you have different layers. The first one are the layouts. That's like the basic, the whole page is how does a form look, we have columns, stuff like that. Next, we have the components. They're like the actionable parts inside the design system, and they are made up of tokens. Tokens would be like font sizes, colors, styles like that, borders, everything like that. We also have the UX patterns that describe how the interactions should work. They plug into the components there, they inform that. This gets more important if you have a bigger UX team and you're sort of like not able to sign off everything they do on the design system. If you're smaller, leave this away. If you're in a bigger team, these get really, really important. And the same on the other side, the style guide, that's basically like the corporate design that informs the tokens of your design system. If I start with the design system, I usually start small, because already this button component, it has different tokens. You have to define the size, the base grid, everything like that. So I'll start small. And the next one, I'll tackle the most complex component that I have. It's usually a table or a card or something like that, because that gives me a place to stress test my concepts and see if whatever I came up with really works in a more complex environment. This is something I tell everybody when I talk about design systems or features in general. Features are like chilies. You know how you say like chilies burn 3 times? When you eat them in your stomach, and once again, you get the point? It's the same with features, right? They cost you 3 times. First, when you build them, and then when you update them, and for the rest of the next 10 years, because there's this one so important tool that doesn't want to update to the current version and everything, so you have to support that old legacy component as well, and it messes up your code. So keep that in mind. Everything you build will bite you in the ass. I hope I'm allowed to say that, Daria. He gave me the thumbs up, good. So, let's have a look at the fourth pillar, building the design system. Do we have devs here? Awesome. Oh, come on. That wasn't loud enough. No way. Also, when we're creating our design system, we have some really, really important decisions to make. And if we're in charge as a product owner, often it's like the designer, the UX designer, that sort of grows into the product owner role of a design system. It's important to sort of like get at least some knowledge about the development background, or get a good developer to your side and listen to them. So I really dig you that you're here. That's awesome. In coding, there's a principle called DRY, which means don't repeat yourself. And it stands for writing everything once, and you don't sort of like write the same functionality over and over again. And that is true for like inside the design system. We build the button component, then we reuse it. But it's also true across the product teams. That's basically why we have design systems, right? So we only write the components once. But also there's something called WET. And it stands for write everything twice. Makes sense, right? Who would do that? Well, actually, turns out it's not that a bad idea. Let's have a look at a button, right? It has 4 variations, nothing special there. Primary, secondary, outline, ghost buttons. These buttons have states. Fairly easy, fairly straightforward, right? Some properties that we can set, a label, sub-label, and icon, and we can animate it. How many combinations do you think you have to test with this button? Any guess? This is your time to shine as a developer, because these only can draw. I'll hit. It's 64. Awesome! I heard it. I heard you. I heard you. It's 64 combinations that you have to test for a simple button, and they have to work. Well, actually, you only have to probably like do a third of them because the other ones will be fairly okay or so exotic that you don't have to test them, but still 20 to 30 test cases for a simple button. Yeah, that's okay. Let's add another property to it, and we've got 80. Remember, that's a button. Let's have a look at a more interesting component. Let's take our card from before. It's a clickable card, and it has 2 4 5 variations. Nothing fancy there, right? It's just a card and has like a product and testimonial variant of it. It's clickable, so we have like a couple states to it. Nothing fancy there either. We do need some properties like the image and title and some other things. Any guess how many combinations we've got here? Come on, it's not that hard. It's 360. Yeah, right. So even if you only test like 10% of this or 20%, and you've got like a couple of components like this, and every time you change a major thing on your design system, good luck regression testing that. But we're not done yet. Let's add another property to this, right? But this time, it's something more cool, like a nested area where we can put in other components, right? So, yeah, right, bam. This is where your design system blows up on you, right? And that's exactly why I said in the beginning, like, keep it simple. Build only what you really, really need. Like, once you've got your design system up and running, like the requests for new features, they will just trickle in all the time. It's your job at that point to say no. Like the general reaction is no. And then you're sort of like, okay, yeah, well, we can talk about that. But generally, keep it simple. And also, you want to keep your design system maintainable 2 years from now. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And this is basically where the wet principle comes back into play. Because we'll need these components, right? So instead of like creating this one master component to rule them all, we actually write it twice or 3 or 4 times. In this case, we have like a main card, a base card, and then we inherit from this. We have a news card with its own layout, and we have a product with additional properties, and we have a review or whatever we have there. And basically that gives you manageable chunks of components. So at some point, it's easier for you to have multiple components, even if you have to do a change like 2 or 3 times. But it's still easier to do that instead of having this one master component that, yeah, makes you not sleep at night. Right. Another very, 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 very important part about design systems that we're all excited about is documentation. Besides like the obvious components in there, which one do you think is like the most important on this list? Thank you. That's true. That's not a joke. It's true. Because like every time, yeah, that's true. I mean, I know you had a smirk on your face, so I wasn't sure if you're like, yeah, Badum. Right. So, because this leads over to our next pillar, maintaining this whole baby, right? Um, how do we keep our devs happy? Well, I'll show you how to make them mad. Let's imagine we have our card from before, and then like our design lead, he shows up and it's like, oh yeah, we have to make this like breathe more. It has to live and more. And you're like, yeah, sure. So what do? These are our paddings, and we add 5 pixels to it, and there's the air, and it breathes and lifts, and yay! But we just broke the design, the product. This here is a problem. This is an actual problem. Every time you change something and something this breaks, your product teams have to comb through the whole product and see if your minor change in the air and breathing everything breaks their product. It's like product teams will go to great extent and use every single pixel to cram content in there. And that's okay because that's their job. But you as a designer of a design system, you have to be mindful of this. So basically everything in your design system is an API, a public API. Which means if you change something there, if you change the spacing, the padding there, it's a breaking change. It's not backwards compatible anymore. But it's not just the padding. What else do you think could be a breaking change in a design system? Font size is one. Color, of course. If you change the background color of a button, your accessibility might not be there anymore. So every time there's very minute things that you can change without having a breaking change in your design system. Just keep that in mind, because every time you break something, you need that change log, because your developers or the product team developers, they need to know what to log out in their product. They have to go through their product and see if everything still works after you messed it up further. Anyway, I've got a special guest here, Lukas. And this is the first time that we're actually allowed to share something that I've worked on, so I'm pretty stoked. So, hello everyone. This is not actually my real title. You might be surprised. My name is Lukas Spierig. I work at SVB. I'm actually a developer. So you will forgive my very minimal slides that follow this one. And I'm going to show you the SVB design system. So let's see if I can actually do this. My PowerPoint foo is not the strongest. Yeah, that's what I worry about. So this is digital.svb.ch. It's our design system. It's something closely protected by our UX team, so this is why Tim cannot usually show this. So this consists of all the necessary parts for a design system, meaning color, fonts, and style guides. So let's see a simple example, if I can actually manage this. Well, first I need to mention something. We actually have two design systems here for different appearances. We have public applications for, well, SVBCH or other subsections that are less known. And we have one for business applications. The reason for that is very simple. The design system web is designed to be very large, to leave an impression, to be flexible up to 5K, I believe. Displays, I mean. And the business application, on the other hand, is intended to be used very compact, to not waste space and to not annoy data scientists or whoever needs to use your app when they need to scroll forever and ever and ever. So, to quickly show you, this one is the design system for the public web. It starts with a sketch library. This one is not actually public, so you will have to have a login for this. The InVision, which is the same, and the GitHub link. This one is public, so you can actually visit this. Then if you go to a component you need, you navigate to it. Oh, it actually loads faster than I was told. And here you have all the necessary descriptions you need for the component. How to use it, when to use it, the rules to be respected when you use it, and then the actual specification. Which is, of course, for us extremely important, as otherwise we will simply guess what the designer intended. So please leave exact specification when you design something. And we have the same, as mentioned, for the business application. You'll see it's a bit small, tiny bit. And then we have my baby, which is the Angular component library. We at SVB use Angular for pretty much our, well, almost most applications we have on the web, except for svb.ch, but that's a different matter.
And for this, we have this documentation essentially. On the one hand, for each component, we have documentation on how you use it. This one is a bit more extensive than others. An API specification, which I will not bore you with, and then examples with actual usage. So this, as mentioned, is available on GitHub. This is publicly available. You can go there and open an issue. Please don't. And this is our primary form of interaction with consumers. But I will get to that later step. So let's return to the PowerPoint. Yeah, the SVB design system timeline is a bit of a special story. As initially we started work with Angular 2 Plus in 2017, and at that point we did not have design system at all. So we had custom implementations. They were lacking to whatever design specification we had. Accessibility was faulty, which is not very good. And also for SVB, it's actually a problem due to the requirements that we have. Also, the Angular integration was really shaky. So it usually broke with every major change that we had. As Tim did not lie, as developers, we hate breaking changes. Documentation helps. So then, in the beginning of 2018, we discussed this problem and tried to address it. We looked for a partner who would initially implement the first version of it, and this work started in autumn last year. Then it went fairly quickly. In October we had our first initial pre-release, which first consumers could use. And half a year later, in April, we had our first stable release. And now, as mentioned, the work is not done. Well, one minor detail, as mentioned, in May we migrated to GitHub because we had one place where we could track our code, our issues, our release management, and this helped tremendously. So, one thing of note, how do you communicate your changes? Use whatever you have available. In our case, we had an internal blog. We used the Microsoft Team channels of corresponding UI groups. And then, of course, GitHub releases, which you can subscribe. And as the next step, GitHub issues. Because as mentioned previously, stuff breaks. And if it does, file a bug issue. Because otherwise, we can't fix it. So, one other thing, we also presented at SVB internal events, like Dev Day or Bootcamp, or whatever is available. One thing in regard to feedback, take it seriously, because usually developers have a nasty habit of if they try something and they don't like it, they will just not use it and give no feedback. I don't think it's limited to developers, but there it's especially a problem. So people like Tim are very valuable because they leave exact feedback and try to even help where they can. Try to be that designer and help your team where you can. One thing, reply quickly, because if someone opens an issue and has to wait weeks for a reply, they will also stop using it. One other thing, try to be kind. No one likes know-it-all, and you want actually people to use your design system. So be kind, or at least try to be patient. Yeah, I think that's from my part. One thing that Tim already mentioned, start small. In our case, we also just started somewhere and tried to see where it goes. And now we have 1.5 design system available and steadily expanding.
I think there was like I didn't don't know if you heard that we said it twice or three times. You're selling your design system internally. So if your product teams don't like your work for whatever reason, they will just not use it. So right now, in current days, design systems are not that well established that we can sort of force it on to other product teams. So we're still selling our design system. Keep that in mind. Anyway, let's wrap this bad boy up. Um, Keep them in mind when you build something, right? Because like for every feature request that comes in on your GitHub issues pages and you implement it, I promise you'll get two bug reports. Then the next one, we trade perfection for speed and consistency. This hurts our design heart. I know. I know from experience. But this is what a design system is about. Good enough is usually good enough. Then this one, it's never a one-off. This is what you have to sell. If you start small, already talk about the roadmap, talk about the vision. Tell them you're building a product that you will be maintaining for the next 2-3 years. Talk about it, even if they don't buy into it, because if you get the initial okay to start with it, and then you're like, oh, by the way, I need another person to help me with it, usually doesn't go down that well. So from the beginning, tell it's the product, tell them the vision and everything, and then they will gradually step into it when they see that they actually have benefits from it. So, and this is basically like why with the rise of design ops and design system, this goes hand in hand, right? So anyway, that was it from us. You might want to take a picture of this because on the top, that's the link to an article series where all everything that I wrote here is talked about is written down. Also, there's a checklist with questions that you can do that you can go through when you're starting a design system, and it has some resources on design systems. Next, if you're interested to be part of a Pilotfund for Validate Design, chat with me afterwards at a beer or send me an email. And this one down here is the SBB design system. If you want to have a look around, feel free. Also, if you've got questions, email Lucas or send me a message. And yeah, that's me.
So thank you very much, Tim. Do you have any questions? So we have time for one or yes, Alina, please. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, you can have enter that into Google, and there's like 3 or 4 tools that work with it. Storybook is one where you can actually have like working components. I think that from all the documentation, the working component is the most important one because that gives everybody sort of like a look and feel. Oh yeah, that's cool. I want to have that. Um, I'd recommend go with Storybook, and then in between there are like 2 or 3 parts that you need sort of to build your design system. The exact names and tools and everything is in the design system link that I had on the slide. So have a look there. Yes, sure. The question was, we have different sources like the GitHub and the Sketch and InVision and everything. How do we keep that in sync? And what's the single point source of truth? The second question is the easier. There's none, usually. That's the hardest part about it, sort of keeping everything in sync. That's a lot of talking and grooming and being really meticulous. That's something Lucas is really, really good. Like in his code, he like correct developers down to like spacings and everything. Like that's the attention to detail that you need when you build a design system. And otherwise, I would say like stick with the tool chain that gives you the least tools. Every single tool that you add in there gives another layer of complexity. Even if it sort of like makes something faster, Once you scale it and you've got like 3, 4 designers on it and 3 or 4 times that developers, simple usually wins. Yeah. The question was, are we still happy with Sketch and InVision, or should we use Figma? To be honest, I use Adobe XD, um, which I'm pretty happy with for the design part. For the app flows, that's pretty good. Look, whatever fits your tool, your team. Take whatever you have. I mean, use the tool you have.